Everybody, it's Reverend Will, the senior minister at First Christian Fulton, coming to you live for our midweek devotion. Let's get right into it. Almost a decade ago, I had a heart scare. It was Lent, so a stressful time. My church's parish nurse was doing free blood pressure checks for those who wanted one, and she acted as sort of a surrogate grandmother there in Burlington. And she made me don that Velcro cuff, and the results weren't pretty. She made me call the doctor right then and there. I did, and I went, and the doctor talked to me about my exercise regimen. He recommended I switch to some type of endurance activity, something that would have long-term benefits for my heart. Biking wasn't an option. I didn't like it enough to justify the cost of purchasing gear. I tried swimming and liked it, but old baseball shoulder injuries reared their heads and I had to stop and give that up too. So I turned to running. Low cost of entry? Yep. Old injuries won't flare up? Yep. The only problem was that I didn't really like it. Listening to music, books, and podcasts helped. Seeing my times get better and better didn't hurt. I was in my 20s then, after all. No longer having high blood pressure showed its effectiveness. Running was good for me. But I still had trouble just going out for a run. It was hard to convince myself. I wasn't and still don't consider myself a runner, someone who enjoys running just for the sake of running. Many were the mornings that I would hear an alarm to get up and run, only to hit the snooze button and roll over. How easier was it to just do that instead of going out in the blistering Midwest heat and humidity in summer, or the booger freezing temperatures in winter? Over the years, though, because there have been fits and spurts and stops and starts, but run. And I found out two things helped me get out there to actually do it, to actually run. One is having a race to train for, something to shoot for, a goal, and others who would run it with me. When I signed up for a half marathon, out there and run and hopefully beat them. It was good motivation. But one thing that unexpectedly helped me for that race with my brother and dad was waiting for me at the finish line. You see, my eldest daughter had just been born when I started training for that race, and she was awaiting me at the end. I didn't know if a 4-month-old can cheer, but it sure felt like she was cheering for me. She was there as I was approaching the finish line. I could see her, and so I ran faster and faster and faster to get there. She was pushing me forward to finish the race. That's why the letter to the Hebrews, its advice speaks to me at a visceral level. Hebrews was written to a group of Christians whose faith is wavering, who wonder if what they're doing is worth the trouble, who are having a tough time getting out there. The author of Hebrews tries to pump his audience up by bringing up all the heroes of faith who fought the good fight and continued in faith despite not receiving in life that for which they hoped. He's reminding them that they are not alone. They are part of a long familial faith line through which hardship, discouragement, and troubles are just par for the course, if I could mix a metaphor. And we would do well to be reminded of this, that the life of faith is not all sunshine and roses. You can't have Easter without Good Friday. New life doesn't come without death. God's throne isn't a gilded chair, but a wooden cross. The author of Hebrews basically is saying, of course, there are times you don't feel like doing it. Everyone feels that way at times. Look at all the people throughout history, Abraham, Sarah, and all down the line. But then he pens one of the most famous lines. He says, "So then, with endurance, let's also run the race that is laid out in front of us, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us. Let's throw off any extra baggage, get rid of the sin that trips us up, and fix our eyes on Jesus, faith's pioneer and perfecter. He endured the cross, ignored its shame for the sake of the joy that was laid out in front of him, and sat down at the right side of God's throne." Get out there and run the race of faith. You aren't the only ones. People are cheering you on. Hosts and hosts of faithful who have already gone on are beckoning you forward. People you love and care about, but also people you couldn't possibly know. They're begging to the end. Hebrews words transverse time. They were to people back then, but they're also to you. Like my infant daughter, there are people waiting on you, calling out and encouraging you onto the finish line of faith. And you could expand the metaphor, but there's no need to belabor the point. We know the life of faith isn't easy. It's not easy to run a half marathon. I told my wife I will never do it again. She's supposed to stop me if I ever get crazy and say I'm thinking about it. She's supposed to say, "No, you said no." The life of faith, we're not always motivated. Sometimes we just want to hit snooze and roll over on the whole thing. And sometimes we even justify it and give in to that temptation. But like running, faith is an endurance activity. We're in it for the long haul. But we're also not alone in our efforts. We have a crowd that cheers for us every step of the way. And not only that, if things get really tough and we find we can't really put one foot in front of the other, we're invited by Hebrews to look to the one who blazed the trail, who made it all possible, who accounted for and forgave every temptation we would give into. Christ is our faith's pioneer and perfecter, and by his sacrifice we are made holy. That's from Hebrews 10, verse 10. You could say, he finished the race for us already, which is good news for those of us who still have a tough time rolling out of bed and putting our shoes on. Thanks for joining me for this week's devotion. Hope you heard that word of grace. You're invited to like and share it with someone who you think needs to hear it, and you're invited to join us for worship on Sunday morning. But if not, our blessing is the same as always. God be with you till we meet again.